And I'm going to let Candice start sharing hers. And while we're waiting, I just want to introduce Candice. It's really special that I get to host this event because Candice and I actually met because of the Nomadic Network. We met at a travel festival. We road tripped to TravelCon together, and I just got back from visiting Candice in Washington. So I can definitely say you all are in for a treat today. Candice has been working seasonally for over 15 years and has been a nomad since the age of 8 years old, which is wild to me. At the age of 11, she sent herself to New Zealand for a foreign exchange program. And over the course of her life, some of her job titles included barista, wilderness guide, tour guide, yoga instructor, public speaker performer, Olympic weightlifting coach, and personal trainer. Incredible. So incredible. Since 2015, she has been spending her summers in Alaska as a tour guide and traveling for the winters. So if you all have done seasonal work before, let us know in the chat and let us know where you did it. And without further ado, I'm going to let Candice take it away.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're going to talk about how to travel more and making money as a seasonal employee. It's pretty wonderful because you can just work for 6 months and then you get to retire for 6 months, depending on how you set up your life, basically. Seasonal work is super fun. It can be a little daunting, especially to start, but we'll hopefully get all that out and it won't be so daunting after this presentation. Like Mia said, I've been working seasonally for over 15 years. I was 17 when I got my first wilderness guiding job in the Seattle area. So a couple of my jobs, like she said, wilderness guide, tour guide, yoga instructor, I've been able to incorporate a lot of these into seasonal work, which has been amazing. Being a public speaker and a tour guide has led to me being able to travel around the US as a performer, giving presentations to groups of 300 or more at different travel expos and events. You see my map here. It's all like pins from different like road trips from that job. It's a blast. Kind of tough to get into, but that's what like the travel community and the seasonal community is all about, is helping each other find those jobs. So that's why we're here. Seasonal work has also allowed me to travel a ton. Like I said before, I like to take 6 months off in the winter. So I've circled the globe twice. I've been to almost every state. Yeah, seasonal work has given me a lot. So what is seasonal work? Basically, it's just short-term contract employment. In the US, you're not going to get health insurance. It's not going to make your parents proud, but you will be able to create a really fun life that you love, that you can learn a bunch from, you can grow a ton from. But yeah, no parent in the history of parents has ever been like, you know what I want my kid to be? A rock climbing guide. That sounds great. Like no parent ever. But it's so fun. And when you go abroad, everybody thinks that tour guiding is like way cooler than people think in the US. There's a little bit of a stigma here. So there's also not going to be much stability within seasonal work. Yeah, you'll have a contract for X amount of months, whether that's 6 months through the summer, 3 months for just the ski season. It really depends on where you're going. So there is a lack of stability, but if you're okay with having stability and like, okay, I spend my summers in Alaska, I spend my winters in Colorado, then you can kind of create some sense of stability. With all seasonal work too, you're gonna develop new skills and experiences. Like when I first went to Alaska, I did not know how to drive a bus. I was not anticipating driving buses. It was not even on my radar. And suddenly I was in Alaska in the wintertime. When the manager walked in and was like, "You're gonna learn how to drive a bus." And I said, no, I'm not. And I did. I learned how to drive buses in the winter in Alaska. Yeah, how I got up there is kind of a random story. I probably should have said that before. In 2015, I actually had just left grad school and was talking with a friend on the phone, and I was bouncing around the US, just living out of my Toyota Corolla. And she said, "You know, my boyfriend's older sister lives in Alaska. You should give her a call. I think you'd like it up there." So I called her, and within 15 minutes, she bought me a flight to Skagway, Alaska. I had a job, I had a house, everything was all lined up. I just had to be there. So I had 3 days to get from LA back up to Seattle to catch a flight, pack all my stuff, and move to Alaska. And then when I did, I was, winter time, living in a bus lot. It was like a 19-person house surrounded by Greyhound buses in Skagway. So very interesting. It's not anticipating that. But the community there is incredible, and that's what makes seasonal work so wonderful. Yeah, all of the people. It is definitely like a work hard, play hard kind of environment. You're binge working for however many months. So it is hard work for a very short period of time. These are some options for seasonal work: ski patrol, hiking guides, bartending, farming, anything in agriculture, even construction work can be seasonal. That's a really great one that usually kind of gets forgotten about, because you can do that anywhere. Like, you don't have to be in a ski resort town or a tourist town. You can be anywhere. So before diving into seasonal work, it's really important to ask yourself a couple questions to help guide your search as far as where you want to go, what kind of work you want to do, why you even want to do it. Because there's going to be times while you're working seasonally when you think, why am I doing this? When you're working a 10 or 12-hour shift for the 17th day in a row, you're going to ask this question. A lot, actually. So self-care is really important with all of this, of course. But having a clear idea of your why will help you get through that. My why was always so I can retire for 6 months. Knowing what kind of work you want to do, checking in on what your skills are currently and what you're interested in learning. That's really important. Say you already love the outdoors, but you're interested in zip lining, or you're interested in learning more about mixology and bartending or whatever. Know what it is that you have as a baseline skill, and then move on from there as far as what you want to learn and what kind of work you'd like to do. It's important too, if you're wanting to travel, to be clear about your financial goals. In some cases, if you're going from like a steady 9-to-5 job and then you switch into seasonal work, it can be a pay cut. For me, it was definitely not a pay cut. In fact, I made quite a bit more as a tour guide than I ever did working in the medical field. So be aware of your financial goals and what it is that you're applying for. There are seasonal companies that will say, well, we pay you in experience, and they give you like minimum wage and whatever. Like, no, that's not acceptable. Find a different company. So be aware that that does exist, and the way that they word it in interviews is tricky. So we'll talk about that. Also be aware of what commitments you might have that could stop you. Do you have pets? Do you have family? Do you have what bills do you have? What's going to be an obstacle in your way to starting a seasonal job? So here are this is a huge list of resources to find seasonal work. And after this, I'll give you a link and you can get the whole slides, all PDF and everything. So you don't need to worry about writing all of this down or screenshot or whatever. These are all clickable links. Vega Jobs is amazing. It's a small company that runs it. It's one guy that lives in his van, and he has like 2 or 3 other guys that kind of help and assist him. But that's a really great resource. That one you can actually search too, like if they provide housing and different like criteria, which is great because there's not really like a resource for vetting companies necessarily or ranking them. You can if they're on Indeed, but most of these companies aren't. So it's kind of a catch-22 that we'll get into later. Coolworks is a really great resource for finding jobs. Workaway seasonal jobs at dol.gov. Yoga Trade is a great one. That one's worldwide, and that one is not just yoga things. It's content creators, it's web developers, it's really anything. And then Alaska specific, just because I've spent most of the last 7 years in Alaska, that one's pretty key. As far as local seasonal jobs, if you don't necessarily want to leave where you're currently at, but you want to get into this field, you can look up local seasonal jobs like Simply Hired, Flex Jobs, Snag a Job. They all have local stuff, and you can search to see. That's probably where you're going to find more construction and agriculture jobs versus workaway and whatnot. Okay, so tips for landing the job. This is very important. So make sure that you have a rock solid cover letter. That is probably the most important thing. I've gotten three different jobs, seasonal jobs, all based on my cover letter. So have a really great cover letter that is going to let your skills shine, and you can make sure that whenever you're filling out your cover letter or making it, go to the company website or their job description and pull out key things from that and include them in your cover letter. Find like really good examples to show that you have that skill that they're looking for. Because a lot of companies, if you say, like, if you allude to it or something, they're not necessarily going to have the brain space or the time to really think about, oh, that's something that I want. Be explicit in saying, I have great customer service skills. This is why, and give an example. Be super explicit and just have a really great cover letter. If you're going for like a luggage crew position, talking about your people skills, probably not going to be that helpful. So don't worry so much about that. Focus on working as a team and being a team player and going the extra mile. If you are looking for more of a tour guiding job, talk about your public speaking, talk about how you're great at enunciating, try to tag into your problem solving and ability to work with diverse cultures and people and being able to bridge the gap. Also dealing with tough situations, that will be key in any kind of a work, like if somebody's upset on your tour, like being able to, my brain is like blanking on what that's called, but being able to help in those situations and like navigate things like that, because it will come up. And if you haven't heard from anybody about your application for over a week, follow up. Give them a call, email them, and then during the interview, once again, just like the cover letter, play up your strengths. Make sure that you're thinking about what it is that they're wanting. Refer back to the job description prior to the interview. And then just remember, like, whatever job position that you're going for, play it up a little bit. Like, it's not like you're faking it. You're just like tapping into that part of you a little bit more and then bringing it to them. So remember to just be your charming, kind self. With seasonal work, generally, you're going to be in smaller towns working in close proximity with people. And so remember that during the interview. Generally, that's the case. Let's make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh, yeah. A lot of these companies are getting hundreds, if not thousands of applications, not to deter you or anything, but just remember, like, in your cover letter to be extra explicit and be like, this is why I'm great, and play up your resume a little bit. Like, if you volunteered once at a public event and you were helping coordinate, or even if you were just like helping pick up garbage, you volunteered at an event, and you should play that up. So it might not be something you do all the time, but and then let's see. Now let's go back here. I do have to share a story about seasonal work. It might deter you a little bit, but for background, Skagway, Alaska, it's a seasonal town. It's a population of about 500 in the wintertime, and then the summertime, when all the cruise lines are coming through, we go up to about 3,000 people population-wise that live there. And it's because we need so many tour guides to help with the cruise ships and whatnot. So most seasonal work and seasonal towns, your first year isn't necessarily going to be great. Generally, your first year is getting accustomed to the town, and your first job, it might not be the best paying, it might not treat you the best. There's a lot there. Try to vet them, and I'll tell you like how to vet companies and stuff too, but it's important to think about that for your first job. Generally, the first year anyway, everybody's just jazzed to be there. And so it'll be fine. It's going to be fun. But the really, really good jobs are generally hard to get your first year. You generally have to make friends and you have to kind of work your way up, because once somebody finds a good seasonal job that they love, they're going to keep coming back. So they're not hiring very often, especially like the really, really, really good companies. They're not hiring very frequently. They're usually having a lot of returners. So be aware that your first year might be a little tough. My second year, I felt like I had the dream job. I was like, yes, this is going to be the best. And it was not. On paper, it looked so fun and so great, but in reality, it was essentially just being the smiling punching bag for this mega corporation in Alaska. And so it's okay to like have kind of a rough summer, and like that's all right. It'll be fine. Maybe your third summer up there will be great, which is whenever my third year in Skagway, that's when I was able to switch into a small family owned company. And that was amazing. I was with them for 5 years and it made such a huge difference. But once again, it took me 3 years to build up into that. And so it is difficult when you are applying and you're going through the job descriptions, when you're going through, when you're interviewing, vetting the companies is really important. And it's difficult to do because they may promise the world, but what they actually deliver is a little different. They might say like, oh, great employee housing, it's this cabin in the middle of town. But then you get there and it's like, okay, this might be a cabin in the middle of town, but like there's holes in the walls. I don't know what that smell is. Why is there 3 people in this bunk bed? What is happening? Like it can get kind of gnarly. So like asking very detailed questions, like tell me more about the housing, tell me more about, that's all very important. So I know this sounds a little bit rough, like seasonal work is not that bad. It is super fun. Like employee housing is what you make it. Like anything, seasonal work is very similar to travel as far as it is what you make it. If you're sad at home, you're going to be sad on vacation. If you're sad at home, you're going to be sad doing seasonal work, that kind of thing. But vetting these companies so that you can get good housing is really important, and make sure that you set the expectation early on as far as like how you communicate, how their management team functions, how they give feedback, how training is. If they're giving safety training, that's going to be really key. If you're going to work for a whitewater rafting company, really ask about their training protocol prior to what their safety protocols are in case of an accident. Ask them about their returners and what percentage of people are coming back. That is going to be a huge sign as to how their company functions. Yeah, there's a rafting company in Alaska that had, there are a lot of safety concerns. All of their employees went to them complaining about this and trying to make some changes. And the following year, nobody was asked back. Everybody was fired. And so it's really important to ask about the returning staff, because if the company says, oh, not many people are returning, or 100% of us, or that's a good sign that like abort mission, get out of that situation. It is not going to be a good place to work. Client support. So client support too is really important. So there are going to be issues with clients anytime with any seasonal job. There's going to be somebody that's unhappy. If they're sad at home, they're sad on vacation. It's just how it is. So there's going to be times when like you have a customer that's either rowdy or being aggressive or something has happened. Ask them about how they deal with that and how they support their employees in those situations. That's going to be a good sign as to how the company runs as well. If they're like, oh, everything's fine, la, 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 and they kind of brush it off, not a great sign for you and the support that you'll get in those situations. There have been a couple times when I've kicked people off of my bus in Alaska, and There was only one instance when I left them on the side of the road in rural Canada. And I just GPSed my boss and was like, this client got a little out of control. I left him on the side of the road. I pinned it, and my boss drove up there, picked him up, and brought him back. No refund was given. It was a terrible situation. But knowing that like your management team has your back always is key. So essential. Okay, and then to the fun stuff. So 6 months off is amazing. I've been able to travel all over the world. It's been a blast. I was able to have Lunar New Year in Malaysia, as you can see in that bottom right. And then going to Europe for the Christmas markets. You can see the Northern Lights there. That was actually just 8 miles away from where I was working seasonally. I've been in Antigua for Lent, which is a blast. I was able to swing through Myanmar right before they closed everything down. I was in that sweet spot when it was open, right before it closed again. It's an amazing place. I'm crossing my fingers that it opens at some point. Okay, so how do we budget so we can travel as long as possible? This one's all about balance. So with seasonal work, you're working hard, you're playing hard. You got to balance out how much you're spending and be aware of it and create a game plan at the beginning of the season. So for me, what I do is all of my paychecks just go straight into my savings. I don't touch them throughout the season. And then my tip money is what I use around town and everything. That helps a ton so you can save more. I also budget it where I'm like, I give myself $100 a week or something. And then that's my spending money for the week. And then I can save more of my tips that way, as long as whatever it is. Because otherwise, like if you're in a seasonal town, it is so easy to be like, there's always something going on every single night. And it's so easy to be like, oh, I'll just go to open mic night. Oh, I had two drinks. That's money. Or, oh, it's karaoke night. I'll go have that. Or it's taco night. And so just be aware, try to put things into perspective, create a balance for yourself between living your life and then still saving money. Another thing that helps me a lot is putting my money into perspective. Like this coffee is a massage in Thailand. Do I need that coffee? No, I'd much rather have a massage. So I'll make my own coffee, that kind of thing. Not that like one coffee makes a huge difference, as we all know, but it helps, it adds up. Also for estimating your trip costs, I'll give you a bunch of resources for creating a budget, like apps, Excel sheets, etc. But estimating your trip cost, if that's your goal, if you're trying to like plan a region, the way that I always do it is I say, okay, if I'm going to go to Europe, I want to aim for $50 a day or whatever. And then I try to map out how much money is that going to be and then go from there. There's also, it's in the next slide, but it's called Trek Hard, and it's a website that was created in like it was created a while ago, but it hasn't been updated super regularly. The prices may have inflated quite a lot, but you can put in your location that you're wanting to travel, the type of transportation that you're going to do, as well as the type of accommodations that you're going to do. And it'll tell you like about how much you're going to spend per day. So it's a great resource. I'll attach it. It's in the next slide. So creating a budget is super important. Tracking your spending, whether that's in an Excel sheet, in an app, whatever makes sense for you. Also, be flexible with yourself and like very gracious, because there are weeks that, yeah, you're gonna go out to like lots of different events and you're gonna spend a little bit more money, and that's okay. Maybe the next week you just don't spend quite as much. But if it's like summer solstice in Alaska and there's things happening every single night and you want to go do the naked bike ride, you want to do the baseball tournament at midnight, you want to do all of these things, like you're probably going to spend money. So it's okay. Be flexible and gracious with yourself. So here are some of these resources, some apps. XE, that's a exchange rate app that's great because you can use it offline. I use Money Manager, but it's not available on Androids. And so these are mostly apps that can be used on both, except for that money manager. That one's nice because it also doesn't need Wi-Fi or any service. Mint is great because you can tap it right into your bank. Splitwise and TriCount are great for if you're traveling in a group, you can split up your money. And so like if somebody spent, that way you're not like Venmoing every single transaction, you can just add it all up and pay out once a week or whatever, and it'll split up like who gets what. Super easy. Trek Card is that calculator I told you about. All of these are different types of trip calculators. And for planning, everybody has a different style, so play around with all of these and see what works best for you. A couple of resources for saving money while you're traveling: couch surfing, woofing, that's a work trade where it's usually with organic farms. Workaway, Worldpackers, house sitting, all of those things are going to help you save money while you're on the road. Let's see. And then my favorite part about seasonal work, the community. This is the best part of seasonal work. And this is what brings me back to Alaska every single year, except for this year. The pandemic, I had to shift it. I pivoted a little bit. But the community is really what makes seasonal work amazing. They'll help you get jobs in the wintertime and summertime. They'll help you move across jobs. Plus, it's so fun to like go do fun activities together, like hiking or camping. Like you can see us all playing Twister at a camp trip that we all took. Or the top middle photo, that is from my company did like a yearly or a summer employee appreciation whitewater rafting trip in rural Canada. And so we would drive like way north into the Yukon and go whitewater rafting, and everybody was allowed to bring a friend and we would go whitewater rafting. And so that kind of thing is so amazing. You can see the middle bottom one too. The brass pick, we're with one of the madams. It's the Red Onion is an old time brothel. It's not a brothel anymore, but it was a brothel during the gold rush. And so you can go on your friends' tours, and it's so much fun to like learn about what other people do and support your friends while they're tour guiding and go hiking after work. The community with seasonal workers is just amazing. It's so fun. It's really helpful too, just to have, because they become your family. They're your chosen family, especially if you're away from home. Yeah, it's an amazing, seasonal workers are an amazing bunch. The community makes it, that's for sure. Plus you get to travel with them in the off season if you'd like. Okay, let's see. I kind of blasted through that, but I am anticipating quite a lot of questions. So I want to end with this. So respond to every call that excites your spirit. It's been the guiding principle for my life. And I hope that this presentation, I know it can seem daunting to jump into seasonal work, but it is amazing and so rewarding. And you meet the most incredible people, especially like as a tour guide or working with the general public. Like my first year, I met a woman who learned how to fly a plane during World War II before she ever learned how to drive a car. And she actually flew the plane across the United States when the war ended. And her teacher was in the back and he slept the entire time. She flew all the way across the US. She was an amazing woman. She was like, I just followed the railroad tracks till I hit the Pacific. So you meet incredible people, and like seasonal work is amazing. I would like, if we can take anything away from this, is that you're totally capable of creating a life that you love, that feeds your soul and lights you on fire and makes you passionate about your life. I hope that you have the resources now to create that life. And if not, of course, ask me questions. So thank you all so much. If you want to ask questions, you can email me, you can Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all of those things. And then this bottom one, I'll send, I think Mia will put it in the chat, but the link to get this presentation so that you can have all the clickable links and everything. Sweet. Thank you all so much.
Awesome, Candice. Woo! I'm sure I'm not the only one clapping. That was amazing. I am considering a career change right now. Thank you so much. We did get some questions. If anyone has more questions for Candice, feel free to drop them in the chat now. And that freebie that Candice mentioned is also in the chat. I'll put it there once more so you all can access it. But Candice, thank you so much for taking the time to share your stories and your wisdom. Jeffrey said this was so inspiring. I never really considered seasonal work until now. Same. This is pretty great. So we did have some questions for you. Sarah asked, are you available for resume or cover letter coaching? Because you nailed it with that slide.
I do that. Yeah. I will help you out. Just email me, send me your resume. I'm down to help out in any way I can. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, y'all know where to reach Candice.
That was
And
my job in college.
oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Catherine asked, do companies have issues with employees staying the entire season so that
Hmm.
those that do stay have a heavier workload than at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, wow, that's a really great question. So a lot of companies actually offer bonuses for staying the whole season. Like it's 500 plus dollars just to stay the whole season. Some companies have a harder time retaining their people than others, of course. Um, but yeah, a lot of companies do have a little bit of a hard time with that, especially if they're hiring from college campuses and stuff. For example, some of the cruise lines that hire for Alaska, they recruit out of BYU, Idaho, and Utah. And so, of course, those people have to go back to school. And so there's going to be a little bit more strain on people towards the beginning and end of the season.
Mhm.
But that's also the slow time. And so it's generally not that noticeable in generally.
So this kind of relates to Christina's question, which is, are seasonal jobs usually full-time or part-time? Can you do them full-time if you wanted to?
Most are full-time. It depends on the company too. You can find some part-time, but it's pretty rare. Um, it used to be like in the early 2000s and 90s in Alaska, we weren't quite as busy. And so in those situations, people would have 2 or 3 jobs and they'd all be part-time and they would just kind of work together. But because the season is so busy, people need just one and they're plenty swamped. Like there's some companies that if you can try to max out at 40 hours, great. Like I was salary for the last couple of years. And so I only worked 40 hours. And that was like a big thing within our company that we just weren't going to overwork ourselves. But prior to that, I was working 70 hours a week for like a couple years for some other companies. But those were hourly too. And so that's the other perk
Mhm.
is like, so in Alaska, every shift that goes over 8 hours, you get time and a half for every hour after 8. And then once you hit 40 hours, you also get time and a half for every hour that you work after that. And so I was fine with it so there's pros and cons.
Yeah, it helps you travel longer. And I love seeing your travel photos too. Those are pretty incredible. Do you know how to get seasonal jobs in other countries? I know you had a slide about finding seasonal jobs. Are some of them international?
Some of them are, yeah. It is a little bit harder, not harder. I think I don't have as much experience with international seasonal work, but I know that depending on the country, there's more regulations as far as like how many hours a week you're working, and you'll get health insurance, whereas in the
It's always a
States, you're not
bonus.
getting it. Um, but some of those resources that are on there, they do have international jobs available, like Yoga Trade, Coolworks, and Vaga Jobs. They have international options on there.
Great. Um, Last question from Felicity. If my partner and I wanted to get seasonal work together, is that possible?
Totally. A lot of companies actually prefer that because they get 2 people staying in one employee bedroom. So it's like a really great perk for them. And so sometimes you can even swing like getting a studio apartment for yourself instead of living in a house with 19 other people, that kind of thing. So a lot of companies prefer couples. Like it's just a huge perk for them. Plus it helps Generally couples stay the whole season too, because if one person's having a bummer time, the other one will kind of lift them up. And so it helps with keeping people for the whole season.
That makes sense. Tina just added, or Tina, I think Tina just added in the chat, a lot of smaller lodges in East Africa hire couples to help run the lodges. They prefer hiring a couple. So if you're coupled up, there are great options for you, it sounds like.
Oh, also for international seasonal work, if you're traveling to a different country, make sure that you check into their visa system and like what the visa process is and if you need sponsorship or not. I know that in the US it can be kind of difficult, and so finding a company that will sponsor you and give you the J1 visa if you're coming into the US. If you're leaving the US, it'll be different. So do just a quick Google search and find out, and that should give you the answers that you need.
It's great advice. Always check out the visas. We did have two more questions. So Diane asked, are there many seasonal workers in Alaska in their 40s?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. So it's not all like seasonal work, I think, has this stereotype that it's all like young people in their 20s, and that is totally not the case. Like, not at all. It's a huge range. Like, some of my seasonal coworkers in Alaska are like in their 60s and 70s. Some people do this as like a post-retirement. They're like, I'm just retired and I don't want to stop working, so I'm gonna like live in Alaska and drive buses, you know? And so there's a huge range of people. And I would say for Alaska specifically, you don't actually get a whole lot of like young 20s. I think that the middle age range, like the median, would be like 30, 40, like 30s and 40s. I'll extend that. I'll say from 25 to like 45. That's your average age. 40s are a bit of a tricky age for going into seasonal work too, just because a lot of 40-year-olds tend to have families and whatnot. And so you'll actually get a lot of families going up and doing seasonal work. Like, they'll bring a trailer, like an RV, and they live with like their two kids, and they work a full season, a summer season, with their two kids in the RV. And then you can totally have a family and do seasonal work. It's pretty impressive. Yeah.
Oh, that's so inspiring. That answered that question. I was wondering that too. For transportation, Christina asked, for transportation, how did you get around? Did you have a personal vehicle? They had mentioned that they sold their car at the beginning of the year to decrease debt.
Mm-hmm. So it depends on which city you're going to. So for me, I was in Skagway, Alaska, and the town is 4 blocks by 22 blocks. I was walking everywhere. Or like, my boss had a whole bunch of bikes and I would just borrow a bike. I do have a personal car. Some companies will even fly you to the location. So like, when I was working in Anchorage, they flew me out to Anchorage from Seattle, and then like I just bounced around with public transit from there. When I worked in Vail for a season, and that one I did have my car there, but they have employee shuttles, and like, so easy to catch it. They run all day, all of the different businesses and stuff. So it really depends on the city. Like, if I was working a seasonal job in Denver, I'd want a personal vehicle if I can't get around from like public transit. But most seasonal jobs are in kind of tourist towns and will have an employee shuttle of some sort. Or if you're in employee housing, somebody else is going to have a vehicle too. You definitely don't need a vehicle at all.
That's great to know. It's great to know too that you can look into options that will maybe take care of transportation to and from the place. I love that. Sarah asked, so she said, so I'm full time with my job right now. Is there a way for me or people like me to try and break into the business by part-time options, or maybe volunteering during busier weekends or a big event?
Yeah, it depends on the area that you're in. So, for example, I am in Tacoma, Washington, or I have been for the last year. And for getting into seasonal jobs and tourism and whatnot, I was just helping out with like little events here and there. Like the owner of the tour company wasn't available for like a ghost tour, and so I would help lead it or whatever. Um, and so just reaching out to them and asking, like, that's what I would do. Helping out at events, anything that'll help like boost your resume too will help, like working at events, volunteering at events, if that's the option that you want to go into. Um, yeah. Think about like your end goal. What skills do you want to have for seasonal work or for the next chapter, the next journey that you're wanting to take? And then find the opportunities around you that are going to help build those skills while you're full time.
Great advice, Candice. Also, I would love for you to lead a ghost tour for me sometime and for all of us. Okay, here is how to connect with Candice again. I'll leave that in the chat. Is there anything else you want to say before we move on to a few last minute housekeeping slides?
I don't think so. Thanks so much. I know I talk really quickly. I'm very excited, and seasonal work is like my it's my favorite thing in the whole world. I took a contract gig to get me through the pandemic, and I'm like every day I'm just so itchy to go back into seasonal work. I'm like, can't I get out of this already? Um, yeah, it's amazing. Seasonal work is so fun. It allowed me to buy like a really sick van and like build it out and everything. So you get what you want out of this kind of work. So
Oh, well, you're definitely making me consider a career change. This was great, Candice. Thank you so much, everyone. Loved your presentation. Loved learning from you. You have so many good resources, so we really appreciate you. And I'm going to ask